Welcome to the Goat's Gravy, the ultimate podcast tailored for young professionals navigating the dynamic world of sales and sales leadership. We are here to serve up a blend of mentorship and advice. In each episode, we dive deep into conversations with accomplished leaders and rising stars in the sales industry. Together, we explore their triumphs, challenges, and invaluable experiences. Our goal? To distill their insights into practical lessons that can seamlessly integrate into your own career journey. So whether you're a seasoned sales expert or just starting out, join us as we ladle out wisdom and inspiration, empowering you to excel in the ever-evolving landscape of sales. Onward we go. Hey everybody, how we doing? Scotty?
I'm doing great, Billy. How about you, buddy?
I've never been better. You got those same glasses on.
Thank you. They're yours.
All right. Well, listen, we've got a special day. We're going to jump right in. D, you doing all right, by the way?
I'm doing well. Stoked to be here.
Good to see you, man. We've got a special guest in studio. Today we have the honor of being joined by a true force of inspiration in Chicagoland, at least, if not across the country. Someone affectionately known as Scott.
The Senator.
The Senator, for his unwavering leadership in every aspect of life, be it coaching, parenting, or in the professional arena. He's a remarkable individual who embodies the essence of leadership, born into a legacy of pioneers, carrying forward his father's legacy of selling and leading, having enjoyed a distinguished 20-year career as a seller and an executive with one of the largest distributors in the electric and service industry. And oh, by the way, a fantastic husband and father to two impressive boys. Please welcome to the podcast, Mr. Brad Selby.
Thank you, Billy. That was a great intro.
Thank you. Thank you. We worked on that.
Yeah.
So, Brad, let's jump into it.
Sure.
Unless we want to go more into the intro, Bill. So, take me back into the day, Bama days. I've got a son at Bama. Mm-hmm. I know you're an alum. I just wanted to understand, get in your brain a little bit about what you were thinking about while you were at Bama and just career choices. Our audience is probably trying to wrestle with that. They may not know what they want to do.
Sure.
This podcast is really focused on sales and mentorship. What were you thinking back then, and how did you end up landing that first gig?
Yeah, well, I was fortunate to go to Alabama, which was a great environment. And for me, my education wasn't just about the classroom. It was the whole experience of going there. So, my fraternity and being involved in things on campus. So, I lived a pretty Spartan existence as a student, and I would say the primary driver for me was I needed a job because I needed money, and looking for something that checked all the boxes. And I was an accounting major, but I really wanted to be in sales. And at the time with recruiting, it was hard to get sales job opportunities with an accounting degree. So was fortunate to land a management training job. I kind of always assumed I had thought of sales as a path to management. That sort of was my ultimate objective. And so I was just lucky to find the company that I work for today, CED, on campus my senior year. So
which is pretty special, by the way.
28 years, which is almost unheard of, and certainly not the way people think anymore. So it was just lucky. That wasn't my intent. I just happened to get with the right company, and those attributes and the culture of the company was just really aligned with how I think about things, and it's just been a good journey. So.
And it's pretty interesting because it's pretty unique. Even back when we all went to graduated college and went to our first roles. For salespeople, typically you might do one or two early jobs, right, to get your teeth sharp. You've stayed for almost 30 years with the same company. So walk us through kind of the why behind that, the career progression, and why you've been there so long.
Yeah, that's I don't have the same job, right? It's the same company, but the job has evolved. And I think for me, it's, we're a large privately held company. So it has a family type atmosphere. But what has kept me with the company was I was always have been given stretch assignments. So when I was 24 years old, had been in the business for 2 years, they gave me a $5 million a year business unit and said, run it. And it wasn't making any money, and I was going to try to turn that around. So those stretch assignments, they give you the opportunity to grow, and then that opens up more doors, and you just kind of take the next challenge as it comes. So the company, what's kept me there certainly is the culture and the people and what you're drawn to. But the job never gets stale, and it's really up to me to kind of figure out how to add value there. It's always been that way. So I've always tried to push myself into stretch assignments. I've always been somebody to raise my hand. Whatever the worst place to go is, that's where I'd want to go. And I've just always kind of felt that way. So.
That's awesome. So early on, though, when you just got started, what did you do that stands out in terms of how you differentiated yourself to get the opportunity for the stretch assignments? I'm assuming it's pretty competitive.
Yeah, that's a great question. And I think that's probably the lesson, or that's what you're trying to get people to think about is, what can you do to differentiate yourself? And, the basics of, showing up on time and giving effort and being a good person, those are certain the basics, but, going above and beyond, taking on opportunities, trying to distinguish yourself in your early days is really about getting noticed. And if you can step out, hopefully somebody notices you and decides that you're somebody that they should, vouch for. So that's kind of, for me, I got a mentor about a year and a half into working for this company, and that person changed my perspective. I remember when I first went to work for CD, I operated my first year with the mindset of, I'm going to leave. I'm going to go do something else at some point in time, and didn't really love the business until I got underneath this individual. His name was Mark Bell. Really great guy, and he was young and building a business, and I worked in his business unit, and he just took me under his wing, and it got me exposed to things, and then he became a champion for me, and that's how I got an opportunity, and that propelled me through a lot of steps in my career. So that is a differentiator when I talk to young people who are in their 30s or maybe approaching 40 and their career hasn't panned out. When you look back, it's typically, they've missed a mentor somewhere. Mm-hmm. And so when you talk about it, I think it's the responsibility of the individual to find a mentor too. There's something to being a good mentee. So that's just an important lesson once you get going early in your career, is identifying somebody that you think can be a champion for you. That's really what you're after.
Great, man.
So some of our audience might be in that rut that you're talking about, and I'm sure Billy's faced several times in his career, I know I have, where I've just been in a rut and I'm like, I got to make a move.
Make a change, like a career change, a job change.
I'm going to pick another company.
Yeah.
Right. And like yourself, I'm a 17-year guy. I'll stick around, whether that's the right choice or not. I tend to work through the tough times, but back in your first kind of handful of years as it relates to sales.
Yeah.
George Shanine just came on the podcast here recently. He's like, we all work for the customer.
Sure.
We don't work for anybody else.
Right.
So what did you learn in that first handful of years about cutting your teeth in sales so that you can share with our audience?
Well, I think, you've got to be effective at building a relationship, but, learning very quickly how to sell up in an organization, right? So, if they said, hey, you need to go call on this purchasing agent because that's the person that cuts purchase orders.
Yep.
And a lot of people will spend a lot of time banging their head against the wall of this purchasing agent only to figure out that somebody's giving that purchasing agent direction. So who is that person, right? So learning quickly how to determine how to move up in the organization and then have a value pitch around that. And, I think as young salespeople, we don't want to admit we don't know something, right? And so I think people that are willing to sort of let it hang out a little bit more, not stress too much about that, but just try to kind of stay in the moment. So, learning how to navigate those relationships, and then really being open to not being afraid to kind of go to a level up or try to approach someone or network with somebody that might be really able to help you.
Just a quick follow-up on that. We've got a saying where I work, lone wolves die, right? So as you approach, I love your concept of going up in an organization. Was that you, or did you task other people that you work with, or was it partners to to climb in an organization to get to quote unquote power. How did you approach that? And maybe how does your team approach that today?
I think that's still what we coach today, and is, to have a value proposition to be able that really sells to, the top of the organization, and let that filter down. So, I think anyone that's competitive, you're trying to win the business. And yeah, if that purchasing agent wants to cut you POs, you'll take the POs. Sure. But if you're not, you've got to try to win that situation. You've got to try to differentiate. So I think it comes down to competition, Scott. And I think to be a good salesperson, it's about being competitive and being, on a team and understanding that you need other expertise and things of that nature. And I think that's another thing for young people, figuring out who to tap in your organization. Right. And then, building those relationships and those networks so when you need them, you can use them.
Yeah, that's great. That's gold. So I think you mentioned, you've obviously been with the same company for almost 30 years, multiple roles. What was the catalyst where you really accelerated your career within that same company, where you hit that growth?
It was about 12 or 13 years ago in Chicago when I decided to kind of do things a different way. And we had a certain mentality throughout our company nationally, the way we built businesses. And we were very slow and methodical in terms of how we invested in infrastructure and things of that nature, rightfully so. But I had kind of put the right talent group together where I thought there was a need to invest significantly more than we typically would have. But I knew the return would be more. And it was a risk. And I remember kind of struggling with this moment of trying to figure out what to do with this business. And I'd had a really bad review with the president of my company where he kind of criticized how cautious I was being, which confused me because I thought that was the way the organization was supposed to be run. And it was sort of at that moment where I figured out, and I came up with this philosophy in my head. We need to go about this a different way. And I get it. It's going to go against the grain of sort of the way we think about business development, but I'm either going to get fired or famous. And I was fine with either one of those. Okay. Mm-hmm. And because you just can't keep doing the same thing. And so I really kind of pushed all the chips into the middle of the table, and it worked. And it wasn't without stress, but it gave me a different clout within my company of, hey, this person really knows how to do something a little different. And it ended up unlocking an incredible amount of growth across the country, the way we approach these large metro markets, which is a big deal in our industry. So just that mentality of, needing to do something different and maybe kind of being at a crossroads. And I think to Scott's point earlier, you hit those marks inside a company. Everybody does, right? Where you're like, you've been long in a project or long in a role or whatever, an initiative, and there just kind of needs to be something new. And, I think sometimes you have to be responsible for that. You have to leave, but and I was at a crossroads where I was either going to leave or try to do something within my company. And so that really set me up and gave me a lot of credibility. And then kind of got me in position to where I am today. So, I think back on that a lot.
Yeah. So I told you we're going to get into your soul a little bit. We're going to dig deep into the soul. So
let's dig in.
We talked about Fred Selby as Brad's dad, who's actually mentored me. He's outstanding. We're going to try to get him on the podcast at some point as well. So we'll do it live in Southern California. But what kind of influence did growing up in a household with a salesperson, a sales leader, ultimately a CEO, how did that experience with Fred kind of influence you on throughout your career?
It's a great question. I think about it today. My dad was in technology sales, and so he worked for a publicly traded company. It was heavily driven on the quarter, right? And I can remember asking, I knew when the end of each quarter was, starting probably in second grade, because I knew my dad's mood was going to be based on however that quarter finished. Not much unlike the two gentlemen sitting to my right.
We have no idea what you're talking about.
Our families know.
Who I think about all the time at the end of a quarter. I don't live that world. I work for a private privately held company and we operate a little bit differently. So, but I respect that. And I grew up in that family. And, my dad was certainly a strong presence. We ate dinner together every night. It happened at about 7:30 if my dad wasn't traveling. And he would come in with his tie and suit from his day, and he would sit down, and it was a sales meeting. And I used to joke when I got into business, I'd go through these forecast meetings, and I'd see my peers all really nervous and upset about it. God, I had that every single night. And so, you were accountable for your performance in school, and it was a check-in, right? So he sat at the head of the table, and you knew you were going to get asked, and you would give a 5-minute update about what was going on. And there might be some follow-up questions, and that might be the end of it, right? Not much unlike most sales meetings that all of us do. So that was a really early exposure. So I think that was really important. The other component that was really important to me was my dad's dad, who was my grandfather, who retired as the president of U.S. Steel International, was a incredible guy, a gentleman, golfer. And so, it's funny, if I look at some things in my own career, they pair up he worked his whole life at U.S. Steel, started out all the way up. And so there's a little bit of a parallel there. He's kind of the reason that led me to the University of Alabama. So certainly my dad and everything that he brought in terms of establishing expectation, but also modeling what kind of an executive looks like. Sure. And so, you guys make the point, well, how did you know you wanted to be in sales? Or what about people that don't know they want to be in sales? I was raised to think that you had to be in sales. Right. I don't care if
Which is interesting that you chose accounting as a major. Why was that?
You know what? He was just adamant, when I was trying to figure out, and he was coaching me, and he said, marketing is, that's not really as unique as the accounting, right? And accounting is the language of business, and it would be a functional degree. It was hard. I don't know that it made a lot of sense at the time, but I look at what I do now, and I do acquisition. Yeah, I spend my time with financial statements. So, that was. I think my dad kind of given me a little bit of direction there, which I think was really good.
So, Brad, when we spend time, outside of work together, you're huge on culture. Yeah. You're huge on your team. Yeah. You're huge on really spending time with them, mentoring them. Quick question about what you look for as you hire, right? You hire a sales team, or it could be a sales leader. Yeah. That ends up reporting to you. What do you look for? Are there 2 or 3 things that you tend to hone in on when you're sitting down with someone? What are those 2 or 3 things?
Well, you want somebody who's bright and inquisitive, right? Or sort of an open mind, that's for sure. I think the other thing, Scott, is you're looking for resilience and grit, right? Look, it's very easy to perform when things are going well, right? So you're looking for, where have you sort of, when things weren't going well, where have you been able to push through that? And, you look at somebody's background, that's certainly a component, but it's hard to assess that, right? Sure. And when you get that right, that's really what you see. And, and then I look for people that can exist, that share sort of the same fundamentals that I do. It's interesting. I look at, the handful of my most inner circle people that I've developed, and, over the years, and I've watched how they've grown and how we've all grown. We all kind of have similar family structure, similar kind of the way we go about our work. And I think that's a big part of the culture. But I also think there was something there that I saw when I was interviewing or evaluating these people for my team. And so, I don't like a lot of drama. And so I like people that are low on drama, high performance, low drama. Yeah. And so, I do look for that. So
can you unpack just one thing quick, Billy? That grit term has been used now multiple times since we started this podcast. Can you unpack that a little bit?
Yeah. I think unpack it in terms of how I view it.
Yeah. What does that mean to you? Because I totally agree with you, by the way, but how do you see that on a day-to-day basis with some of your folks?
Well, it's just how do people, push through challenges and, or are they willing to push through challenges? Will they seek out a challenge, right? I mean, I think, look, we all spend lots of time around each other. Our kids spend time around each other. And, I think a lot of it starts here, when kids are young and you see them come up, and are they willing to push through things? So, it's almost one of those things that when you ask, well, give me a specific definition of it, it's not easy, but when you see it, right? And, it's just that ability to persevere and push and, at different spots. And a lot of times you have to do that on your own. You can have people pushing on you, but the ability to just sort of, and you know what I've found over time, some people like that. They actually like those challenges, and it sort of motivates them even more. So
it may be important, Billy, and I'll hand it over to you, but it may be important for our listeners out there that are going to be going in interviews or their next interview to come up with that one moment to define their own grit and really tell the story, right? 100%. Everyone's got to have that story to tell.
Yeah, that is incredible advice there. Yes, if you are interviewing for a job, you should have that in your hip pocket, right? That is a differentiator, and you want to be able to articulate that really well, kind of where you've had that experience. But that's terrific advice.
How about for promoting people? Obviously, in your position, you have this great program as a company where you have people come in and go through this leadership training program. What's the criteria for promoting someone out of sales into those positions? Is it the same thing for you, or is it different?
No, I mean, I think, we look for some key components. One of them, the first and foremost is, does the person want to do that? Right. The world is full of a lot of really good salespeople who ended up being bad managers and vice versa, right? So, but as you grow in your career, typically if you're a sharp young person that's applying yourself, you're going to get an opportunity to manage. And so, I think that's that should be an objective for a lot of people if that's what you want. What we look for if we're going to move somebody out of sales again is, are they willing? Do they want that? And then B, do we have somewhere that's the right fit for them? And we try to think hard about that, because that's really important for a young person that you're giving a stretch assignment to, right? So it's one thing if we get a stretch assignment with all of our experience, but you still have a very fragile young person there, right? And every company is trying to figure out how to develop these people, because that is the competitive advantage now. Your people you are developing, that is your competitive advantage. And if you're a company that has the ability to build a minor league system, whatever that means, that could be one person or 3 persons or 300, but investing in that next generation of people who can come up through the company who have that desire to sort of keep growing. So, we just try to look for some basic competency that they've demonstrated a little bit of grit, but we also try to determine who has the right sort of original equipment for management 2 years before we put them into a job, right? Yep. And then we got a couple years to develop them. So, and they don't all develop. And we have a lot of people that we think are going to be managers, and they get into a sales role and they're like, that's it. Like, this is what I want to do. And you're like, that's fantastic. And that's a win too. So, we typically look for people that have great sales skills, because even if, we talk about sales, or you guys are talking about sales, and I think the basic tenet is you think about it from I'm selling to somebody, right? Well, if you work for a large organization, you spend a lot of time selling inside your group, right? And so all the same, components of selling, of, relationship building and understanding your pitch and your value. Well, a lot of times that's inside your own company, and that is an effective skill too to have. So I think that's important to remember.
So Brad, what are some resources you guide our audience around looking at, whether it's certain books, podcasts, what leaders do you really respect and kind of follow?
Well, you too.
Look at that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's very
and
nice.
Billy's very good about giving me books. I really look up to the boss I work for now. I really respect and look up to, and that's a good resource. I've got some other good mentors in the business. I am really blessed, Billy, and I don't mean this because we're sitting here. I just have a lot of great people in my life, and my friends, right? I have a lot of great people work-wise. I have a personal life with a lot of great people. I have a great family. So, inspiration comes at different points. So you don't say, well, whatever this person reads, that's what I read, right? Mm-hmm. That could be my sophomore comes bebopping through one day, and I go, and we talk about something, and it spurs an idea, right? So I think what I try to do is just be open-minded to whoever I'm around, right? And I was traveling this week in Kansas City. I stayed in the same hotel 3 nights. And the woman that was running the little coffee bar downstairs, I saw her 3 straight mornings, right? And I was really blown away by how passionate this woman was about doing her job, but also the quality at which she did her job, which had to come from a place of joy or a real wanting to be there. And it wasn't, she was really happy Tuesday, but not happy Wednesday. And so, just her mindset, and that's the thing I've really started to think about. Her mindset as she was going about her work was just different than somebody else's mindset might be. And so I think you see those examples as you're going through your daily life, and you try to take those, right? And so it just comes in various forms all over the place. But you should try to surround yourself with as many enlightened people as you possibly can.
Sorry, the one thing I've seen you really work on is you're just very intentional about constantly
sometimes too much.
That's Kirsten about that.
Sometimes too much.
We've had a lot of conversations, what's going on in our lives, our jobs, and a lot of deep thinking. But knowing that you have people to go to, I think that's awesome. You've got a great network. Is there one person maybe that stands out that's had the biggest influence on you throughout your career, and maybe what's 1 or 2 practical lessons you've pulled away from them?
So a person so from just a professional standpoint,
it could be personal, it could be professional.
In something, there's been a lot of people that stand out professionally. I worked for the same guy for 17 years in this job and learned a lot from him. That in my career, that manager, when I was a 23-year-old kid and I had that mentor, Mark Bell, that was really important to me and really taught me a lot about culture and, the importance of building a good team and a good culture. And so, I take away that I look for people that can build good cultures. And, when I'm going around my company, I see peers or whatever, and I'm like, wow, that person builds a really good culture. So I look for that. And that's just one of my basic principles. And, my philosophy on business is that the individual builds the organization and the organization builds the business. And you can only do that if you have, the right culture. And so we try to stay focused on that and, lead with people and make sure you have good people and everything follows from there.
Yeah. Love it.
That's awesome.
So our audience is, we talk a lot about mentorship. So as a mentee, as a young mentee, in their 20s, maybe it's early 30s. We just had Paul Knox on recently, and the way he takes advantage and structures the folks that are going to help him as a mentee is really impressive. He's aggressive about it. He's purposeful about it. So any advice to the audience about just going to grab a mentor can sometimes not be that easy.
Right.
Can you talk about frequency? Can you talk about how you'd approach someone? Mm-hmm. Do you frame out a conversation? Do you focus on a weakness? What's the best technique for our audience as a mentee to go find a mentor and have it stick? Any comments there?
That's a great question. And I do think that's important. Again, being a good mentee. I think if there's somebody you think might be a good mentor, and what, we use the term mentor, but what you're really looking for is a champion. You're looking for somebody that what you really want is somebody who's respected in the organization that says, this Billy kid is legit right
Yep.
here, and is willing to vouch for you, or maybe put themselves out there to help you, get them because they believe in you, right?
Sure.
Okay, so if so how do you build a champion within your organization, right? And so how do you find that champion? I think the mistake that some people make is they try to develop a relationship with somebody who's too many levels above them or too far removed from their day to day, right?
Yep.
Because they respect that person, or they saw that person give a presentation, it really spoke to them, or they've heard stories. So, I get it, and I'm not saying you shouldn't have a relationship,
really
but if you really want to develop a somebody that's close in your world, right? And find that person and, talk to a few different people. You don't know where the connection's going to come from, but I think trying to keep it a little bit closer to home instead of saying, well, the CEO is, I'm going to go, how, can I call you and ask? And I'll get those questions. Can I have your business card? And I'm like, oh, this person, which is fine.
Yeah.
And I'd be happy to give anybody any time, but it's not the same as somebody who sees you on a daily basis or on a more regular basis and can see what you can do. So, and that could be your boss too. I mean, so, I think you're looking for a champion. And so I think you're trying to find one or two things you're trying to improve, or you're trying to understand that you think that person does fairly well, and saying, hey, Scott, I've noticed you do this really well. I'd be curious, how you think I could improve, or how I could learn that, or whatever. And then I think what the mentor or the champion sees is somebody that wants to learn, right? Yeah. And it's not just about, opportunistic. I can tell when somebody's trying to approach me from a purely opportunistic standpoint. Sure. I can also tell when somebody's heard me say something and they go, oh, that's really interesting, or I haven't heard that perspective, and they follow up that way. So, and
is that monthly, Brad? Is it quarterly?
I think it depends on, that's a great question too. I think, in your career, early in your career, your mentor or your champion is probably someone you're talking to weekly, right? So in your first job, your mentor is somebody right in your immediate sphere that you're seeing on a regular basis. Then as you progress through your career, right, a few years later, you're a little bit more senior. Well, that person might be a little bit more remote, right? That person might be your boss. That might be somebody you're dotted line to somewhere who you see on a regular basis. So I think as it goes along, once a quarter, I think is, you want to see if you can get on that person's docket, but it shouldn't be hard because that person should be looking out for you.
Sure.
So
I like it. Thank you.
Just a couple more questions and we'll get to our speed round with Dimitri, but thinking about risk reward, right, in everyone's career, maybe an example of a risk you took that didn't work out and maybe a risk you took that did work out, and walk through those scenarios.
A risk that I took, man, that's a great question. And the fact that it takes me it takes me a couple seconds to think about that probably means I haven't taken enough risk, which some people would say. I sometimes criticize myself that way. I think if I look back on it, Billy, the risks I've taken, the risk I took a risk 6 or 7 years ago. I had an opportunity to leave for a very significant job. And the risk I took was not to leave to take that job. And that there would be sort of a continued career track inside my own company. And if I let that opportunity pass, and I did. I stayed when I could have, jumped ship, and it was a pretty good opportunity. So, I think that was a risk. I mean, yeah, I've taken risks. I've made hires that didn't pan out, and but those they seem like risks at the time, and then when you look back, they don't seem all that risky. And so, probably haven't. I'm sure there are things that have happened, but I don't fixate on that. I guess that's not the way that my mind works. I mean, I'm placing bets all the time. I'm taking risk, but not to the degree of, that some people would. So
I've got a quick question, Billy, then we can transition if you'd like. But as a people leader, I always struggle where there's a saying out there, see problem, fix problem. And I've been guilty of just hanging on too long. personally, and it's really hurt me. It's hurt our teams over the years. How do you view see problem, fix problem? Do you have a process that you go through when someone isn't working out? Because our audience, we might have some first line leaders out there that are struggling with this, and they're as good as their team.
Yeah.
Any advice that you'd give them as it relates to what's that feel like? What's that look like? Is there a process there that you go through as a people leader?
No, when somebody's not.
Yeah, they're not performing. Your gut says it's not right.
Yeah.
It's easy to go on to the next task.
Sure.
How do you handle that?
Well, I mean, I think being very intentional and being quick about dealing with those situations, I think are really important, because I think the rest of your team is looking at you, how you handle those as well. Right. And so, the way we try to think about it is, that if somebody's just doing something blatantly against company policy or, those are separate. I think what you're talking about is more somebody who's kind of trying, but for whatever reason, it's just not quite a fit. The quicker you can move on from that person, the better. And I think a lot of companies and a lot of individuals just drag that process out for so long. And every one of us that have done, and we've all done it. And when you're young, you drag it out even longer. Yeah. And as you get older or more experienced, you do that less. But all of us would know, any of those conversations that came or any of those decisions that had to be made to move somebody on were very painful leading up to them. And you felt pretty good after it was over. Sure. Right. And rarely did you say, wow, I wish I would have waited another 90 days to take care of that. Yeah, but it's fair to that person too. They've got to move on.
That's right. It's usually the best thing for them.
Yes. It's humane. I mean, so that's the way you try to think about it. And, if it's somebody that has worked for you for a while, you treat them right on the way out the door. Sure. And there are ways to do that. It's not always easy and it's not always clean, but you've got to protect the team. And the team as a leader is looking at you in terms of how you handle the other parts of the team, right? And so your credibility gets on the line, and you have to pay attention to that. And people are so concerned about how that person's going to feel, or if they're doing a bad thing by dealing with this situation. No, you're not. That person needs to go on to what they need to go on. You've got to protect your culture and your company, and that's most important.
Love that answer.
Dude, Brad, it's nothing but gold. So let me ask you, anything you want to get out there before we go to Dimitri for our quick hits to wrap things up? Anything else you want to share? No,
I really appreciate the opportunity to do this. I mean, you guys are two that you're brothers to me. I've known you a long time and look up to you both as human beings and fathers and business leaders. And our conversations touch all kinds of subjects, and we have lots of experience together. So I think it's really cool that you're doing this, and I'm really anxious to see how this evolves and how this goes forward. And but it's cool. And you guys are always thinking about how to serve others, and especially you, Billy. And you think about that a lot. And I think what you're doing here is how do you put some of this experience out there in a way that's going to help other people. And it's timely because we all have kids now that are sort of starting into this range. And, we all are very, I would think, grateful for what we have. And we've been really fortunate in the decisions we've made. But if you go back and look at the 22, 23-year-old versions of ourselves, man, they're from where we were to where we got.
Yeah. A lot of regrets.
Surprised we got here, Brad.
Well, you know what? But think about it. And back in your life, you're sitting here today. Think about how finite things are. One little decision, one little thing this way or that way, sends things down a different path. So just really grateful to know you guys.
Back at you, man. Thank you so much. That's why we wanted to be one of the first people on the podcast. Dude, you've got great senator to share. The senator. Let's go. All right, Dimitri, let's turn it over to you for some quick hits.
Brad, love everything you've had to say. Seriously, bringing some gems to the table.
All right.
I'd like to shift our focus to what we like to call the quick hit section. And really, these are just practical strategies and skills that you found instrumental in your career. And so the real goal is to get some very clean takeaways for our younger audience. And so
Got it.
We'll dive into networking, preparation, prospecting, interviewing, negotiation, social selling, and lastly, self-development. And so
Gotcha.
Let's jump in if you're ready.
Okay, go ahead.
So first questions are related to networking. Could you share a specific story or example of how networking has directly impacted your career?
Yeah, I mean, I've been able to make a couple of really good acquisitions through my career, and that came from just being at events, and again, kind of going out of my way just to meet somebody or not being afraid to walk up and talk to somebody. So, you never know where that connection is going to come from. So, being fearless about talking to people is what I would say there.
Totally. And for the younger audience, like acquisition, does this mean like a new business opportunity?
Yeah. Yes. Acquiring a company.
Cool. Awesome. Moving on to preparation and follow-up. What's your go-to method that you teach to your team or for yourself to ensure that you're well prepared for meetings, presentations? And then lastly, how do you make sure those interactions are genuine and effective?
So for preparation, that would certainly be any sort of research that can be done ahead of time. I firmly believe any young salesperson should have almost a canned elevator pitch that's memorized, at least the first couple minutes of it, so that if you got in a situation, and they call it an elevator pitch, but something that's very quick, that is your go-to, that you just have, that you feel really comfortable. And that could be a specific product or a feature or benefit, something that is just sort of the way you say it is right. You believe it in a certain way. So having that amount of prep, just having that ready to go at all times, I think is important.
Awesome. And then the last part of that question is, how do you make sure those interactions are genuine and effective?
How do you make sure those? That's a good question. I'm not sure I have the answer to that. How would anybody else say? How would you guys answer that?
I think, he has me stumped too. I would say probably it's more how you follow up with people. I think, you do your preparation, you go into a meeting. I learned this early in my career where, you don't walk in and ask, for me, a medical practice, like, tell me about your practice. I should go in and already know everything about that practice. To me, that's where it feels maybe genuine, where I'll walk in and, hey, you've done X, Y, and Z.
Right. Can I re-answer this question?
Of
course.
Absolutely.
I'm going to answer it from a different perspective, okay? Because I'm a wholesale distributor, which means I have manufacturers and people that call on me, and we have a sales team that calls on other people, right? So I'm very critical of salespeople that come and call on me. It's because salespeople call on me, and they're typically calling on me to go over numbers or talk about what's happening in my organization. They may be selling something specific. They may be wanting us to invest in a certain product line, whatever that might be. What I am most impressed with, and this is when I see somebody come through and they come in and they are talking to me, is that they've gone through and looked at some sort of numbers before they came through the door that are relevant. Okay. Yep. I can't tell you how often I get a young person that comes to call on me and they're going over numbers that aren't even my numbers. Yeah. Right. Which tells me that there's nothing there. There was no real preparation there. But if somebody's taken the time to go through the numbers, organize them a certain way, maybe present the data a certain way, that they've paid attention enough, or they know something about my organization that they think, well, this is an opportunity. So, showing up and having information, but making sure it's relevant, that is a challenge, but that you have to have the preparation to do that. And if it's relevant, then you know it. That's really that's the genuineness of it.
And Brad, I got to chime in here, even though you're supposed to be quick hits, D. I got to step in. So, at my house, 7 p.m. on Sundays, it shuts down.
But is this your role?
This connects to you too, because I know how you are on Sundays.
Yes.
That's almost like a half a work day.
Yeah.
Right. And and I think what you're doing and what I do, and I know Billy does the same thing, is we're setting up our week.
Yeah.
We're setting up the following week. We're prepared. So when I hear that term genuine, how are you disingenuous? You're scrambling.
Yeah.
You don't know what you're doing.
Sure.
Back to your point around, are they bringing relevant numbers and had a plan? And do they know my business?
Right.
At that point, you can be genuine because you're not scrambling. But that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
But I think it all goes back to prep.
Yeah. I think that's a great answer.
Yeah.
Huge. Awesome. Well, let's keep the ball rolling. What's your favorite prospecting strategy that yields results for your company?
Referrals. So, talking, if we have a good customer, they typically, in our industry, they typically know somebody else. And if you do a good job for somebody, trying to get that person to kind of open another door for you is typically really the best mode in my business.
Awesome. For when you're interviewing a new prospect, what's the most important quality or skill you're looking for?
A new prospect, like a salesperson?
Excuse me, not a new prospect, a new candidate.
A new candidate. Interpersonal skills.
Beautiful. Negotiation.
Specifically, a proper handshake.
Oh boy,
you gotta have no dead fishes. If there's a dead fish,
no loosey goosey.
I mean, just the basics. People make decisions fast, and so can you own that first 30 seconds of meeting somebody?
I've actually reshaken someone's hand. If it's just
it's
off,
bad, right?
I'll go in for a second try. Make sure you get.
I go in with the left at all times. So I don't know about you.
Fist bump. You can't screw it up.
Yeah.
All right, let's move on to negotiation. Can you share a negotiation success story that led to an awesome business outcome for you?
Well, my philosophy on negotiation is to win the war, not the battle, right? And so, occasionally I've had some situations where I'm negotiating something, and I'm willing to lose a battle knowing it's going to set me up for something going forward down the line. So, when two parties are negotiating back and forth, or you're negotiating a project, when I was a young salesperson, I was negotiating for this large order. It was a $3 million order worth of wire and cable for the NBA arena in Memphis, Tennessee. And we bid it and I didn't get the order. And we were going back and forth, and the customer wanted to buy from me, but I couldn't get to the price, and I had to switch to a different manufacturer. He'd already given the order away. And I went back to him and I said, "Hey, I've got a better price. Can I get this order now?" And he said, "No, I've already given away." And I said, "Okay. Well, here, I'll give you this price anyways. Whether you want to use it or not, you can use it to beat up your other guy, or you can, whatever." And for whatever reason, he appreciated that, and gave me the order, and then immediately gave me the order at a kind of a thin pricing margin. And we talked about how he needed to play it for the manufacturer, which he did. And so, I think in a negotiation, there's a lot of ways to come out on the end where both parties can win. And, it's cliche that you want to have a win-win situation, but you do, at the end of the day, a good transaction, both parties feel that they've won. So,
totally. And we're going to skip to the last one, which is self-developing. What's one specific method or resource you rely on for continuous self-development, and how has that made a noticeable impact in your career?
Well, the primary resource for my self-development are my friends. And, the people that I'm around on a daily basis. And it's not any one sort of thing. It's a culmination of things. I think from a self-development standpoint, the first thing you've got to have is an attitude that you want to always kind of be trying to get better. And you have to know what your baseline is. And so if you know what your baseline is, you can constantly go back to that baseline and kind of try to be working, to get better. But it's a never-ending battle of sort of self-development, and all of us know when we get challenged and we put ourselves out there, like putting a podcast together, that's how you develop. And that is self-development. And putting your talents into areas that aren't that comfortable for you is really where the growth comes from. So I'm an avid reader. Every couple of years I pick up a new habit. I believe strongly, if I can give any young person advice, transcendental meditation is an absolute game changer. And I don't talk about it a lot. I'm not even sure if I've ever even talked about it with you, but I really believe that is a game changer. That is a tool that I got into a couple years ago that changed my life. And I wish somebody would have, taught that to me in my younger years. And so, so I'm always looking for those things to try to make myself more effective and operate with a clean mind. And, some days are better than others.
Great.
Listen, man, that's it's been fantastic. It's really, you have so much great knowledge to share. The senator in-house in studio. We'll have him back for sure. So thank you so much for joining us.
Brad, thank you, buddy.
Scotty, Billy,
You're
thank
the
you.
best, dude.
Dimitri, thank you very much. Good job.
Thanks so much.
Thanks, everyone.
Okay. Thanks, guys. See ya.
And that brings us to the end of another episode of The Goat's Gravy. We've shared some awesome insights and strategies aimed at enhancing your journey in sales. And the conversation does not have to stop here. So be sure to follow us on social media at The Goat's Gravy and explore more at thegoatsgravy.com. Your journey towards sales mastery is ongoing, and we're here to support you at every step. So thank you for tuning in today. Stay curious, stay driven, and we'll see you on the next episode. Take care.